Summary of The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Mr. Sempier, a second-hand bookshop owner, takes his son Daniel to the cemetery of forgotten books for the very first time in the year 1945 in the city of Barcelona. The cemetery is a secret library that only booksellers and literary people in the city know about. It keeps books safe that might be lost forever in the real world. Daniel is amazed by how big and varied the library is, as well as by all the ways it can be used to learn. When he is told he can pick out a book to take home, he looks around the library until he finds The Shadow of the Wind by Julian Carrix. He isn't sure if he is being led by chance or its more flamboyant cousin, destiny. The book jacket tells Daniel that Carrix is from Barcelona, but Daniel's dad has never heard of the author. They talk to another dealer, Gustavo Barcelo, who is rich and has a lot of connections. He tells them that no one knows who Carrix is, but his books are getting more valuable because they keep disappearing. Daniel says no to Barcelo's offer to buy the book. Barcelo asks Daniel to his house so that he can look at it. There, Daniel meets Barcelo's blind sister Clara, becomes friends with her, and falls in love with her. Daniel reads out loud to her in the room every afternoon so he can spend time with her. His father and the Barcelos' kind maid, Bernarda, don't believe that he is deeply in love with an older woman he will never be with. After a few years, Daniel asks Clara to his 16th birthday party, but she never shows up. Daniel is upset, so he leaves the house and walks around the city. While he's there, a scary stranger comes up to him and asks where his copy of The Shadow of the Wind is. Daniel left the book at Clara's house and is afraid that the stranger will hurt her, so he goes to get it. When he gets to the apartment, he finds Clara in bed with Adrian Neri, her music teacher. He feels incredibly cheated. He hides the book in the cemetery of forgotten books when he brings it back. Daniel no longer has to worry about Clara, so he has more time to do regular teen things like hang out with his best friend Tomas. He hires another person, a homeless guy named Fermin, to work in the store with his father. Fermin is great at selling books and finding rare ones. Daniel starts to look into Julian Carrix's past by going to the building where he grew up and asking the guardian and administrator about his family. He also talks to Nuria Montfort, Carrix's publisher's secretary, but she says she doesn't know much about him. At the same time, a scary police officer named Inspector Fumero shows up at the shop looking for Fermin, who was a political prisoner in Spain during the Civil War. Daniel meets Tomas's older sister Bea at her college and falls in love with her, even though they were enemies as kids. She is going to marry a young Nazi fighter named Pablo, but she doesn't seem excited about the idea, so she agrees to meet Daniel. Daniel shows her the cemetery of forgotten books and tells her everything he knows about Carrix during their evening together. He falls in love with her, even though he knows that her dad would not let them be together. Daniel tells Fermin about his rising obsession with Carrix because he needs his help with an investigation. Fermin is also interested. Fermin finds out that Nuria lied when she said she didn't know Carrix very well. Their trip to Carrix's school, where they meet his old friend Father Fernando, is Fermin's idea. The priest tells them that Carrix grew up in a home where he was abused and was helped by Mr. Aldaya, who was rich and powerful and paid for his private school. Carrix was friends with Aldaya's son Jorge and fell in love with his daughter Penelope, even though they were from different social classes and knew they couldn't be together. Javier Fumero, who was the caretaker's son, was also in love with Penelope. When Carrix found out about their relationship, he tried to kill him. Bea helps Daniel get into the old Aldaya house, which is owned by the real estate company her dad runs. She learns that the house was built by Salvador Jausa, a strange millionaire whose lover and helper Maricela poisoned him and killed his wife. For the rest of his life, Jausa was sure that Maricela's ghost lived in the house and tried many ways to get in touch with it. This gave the house a reputation for being cursed. They bought the house soon after and moved in. Daniel and Beatrice have sex in the house after telling this story. Daniel and Fermin go to the hospice where Penelope's loving old teacher Jacinta lives after Father Fernando tells them to. Jacinta tells them that Zacharias, a mysterious being that shows up in her dreams and tells her what will happen, has always been with her and helped her through life. He led her to the Aldayas, and Jacinta thought of Penelope as her daughter. It was Jacinta who helped Penelope have an affair with Carix in secret. She also told Penelope that she and Carix's best friend Miguel were planning to run away to Paris. Even so, Mr. Aldaya found out about the affair and learned that Penelope was pregnant right before they ran away. He locked up Jacinta in a mental hospital, and when she gets out, she can't find Penelope anywhere. Daniel and Fermin run into Fumero on their way home. Fumero beats up Fermin and tells them not to look into Carix's past. Daniel takes his friend to Barcelo's place to get better and tells Barcelo the whole story. Barcelo agrees to help Daniel look into what happened. On the following day, Daniel goes back to the Aldaya mansion to meet Bea again. Her promise to call him the next day never comes true. It's been a week since she last spoke to him. He finds out that her father knows about their affair and is threatening to kill him when he finally calls the house. Daniel goes to see Nuria and tells her he knows she's been lying, but she won't tell him anything. He wants to know what she really knows. That night, she is killed in a strange way, and the news reports say that a known criminal who fits Fermin's description did it. Daniel's dad finally understands that he and Fermin got into trouble, and he tells Daniel that he is to blame for Nuria's death. Nuria's dad gives Daniel a letter from her that tells the truth about Carix. In the 1930s, she met him and started dating him, even though he told her he would only ever love Penelope. She met his friend Miguel, who fell in love with her, but she didn't return the love. Miguel and Nuria fell in love because they were both lonely and crazy about Carix. Miguel told Nuria that Penelope was locked in her room by Mr. Aldaya while she was pregnant and had to give birth on her own, which is how she died. Even though Miguel knew it would make Carix mad, he didn't tell him. He knew Carix would fight Mr. Aldaya. Sophie, Carix's mother, told Miguel that she had an affair with Mr. Aldaya a long time ago and that Carix and Penelope were related. At the same time, Jorge, the only member of the Aldaya family who was still alive, fell into ruin. He became friends with Fumero, who used him to trap Carix and get him to fight Carix in Paris. This made Carix kill Jorge and run away to Barcelona. One of Carix's friends told Nuria and Miguel about this, and they couldn't wait for him to get there. Once he did, they started looking for him all over the city. One night, Miguel found him at the old Aldaya house, but the cops were on their trail as well. It was Miguel's plan for the cops to shoot him instead of Carix that made them shoot Miguel. After that, Carix falls in love with Nuria again, but he keeps looking for Penelope in the city until he finds her body buried in the crypt under the Aldaya house. He sets fire to the building where his books are kept out of anger and sadness. The fire has burned and changed the shape of his face. He changes himself and calls this new self Lane Kubert, which is the name of the devil in one of his books. As Kubert, he finds and burns all copies of his work that are still out there. He also steals to support himself and Nuria. When Carix/Kubert finds Daniel's copy of The Shadow of the Wind, he admires how honest Daniel is by refusing to give it up. Carix watches Daniel as he grows up because he thinks Daniel is a lot like himself when he was younger. Daniel wants to find Bea and fight for her after reading the text. Tomas tells him angry that she's pregnant and has run away when he goes to her house. Daniel finds her at the Aldaya house, where she already knows Carix and is friends with him. But Fumero soon shows up, and Daniel and Carix have to fight him. They finally pin him to the arm of a garden figure of an angel. Because he was shot during the fight, Daniel has to stay in the hospital for weeks. After that, he gets married to Bea, who soon has a son named Julian. After 10 years, Daniel is now settled down and helps Bea run his dad's store. Carix has run away to Paris and started writing again under a different name. Fermin is put in charge of the cemetery of forgotten books. At the end of the book, Daniel takes his son to the cemetery for the first time, just like his dad did with him many years ago.
About the author. Zafón was born in Barcelona in 1964. He went to military school and then college to study information science. He started out in publicity and worked his way up to become the creative head of a major publicity agency in Barcelona. But in 1992, he quit this job to pursue writing. Until 2001, when he wrote The Shadow of the Wind, his first book for adults. His first books were written for children and came out in the 1990s. The Angel's Game and The Prisoner of Heaven are the two sequels. He lives in Barcelona.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.